for KSL.com Sports. I'm Sean Walker, resident college sports reporter, high school sports reporter. I get around, do a little bit of everything. And today on this podcast, I'm really excited because I'm finally going to release the tapes for you guys about an interview that I did recently with Utah Warriors head coach Greg Cooper. Really good interview. I just haven't gotten around to posting it, and I needed to do some light editing on it, but that's finally done. And I feel like it's especially fitting because I sat down with Coach Greg Cooper, a little after his first season in charge of Utah's professional rugby side, and we talked about the season. We talked about his first year stateside in the United States, coaching in Major League Rugby, a little bit about the growth of the game and kind of where the game is at here in the U.S. He's obviously a New Zealand international, former New Zealand All Blacks. He's coached all over the world, in Europe, in Japan, most recently, as well as in his native country. And so I thought he had some really good insights, some really interesting insights about the culture of rugby in the United States, as well as the culture of rugby in Utah and kind of where it stands. He's heading into his second season in Utah. Just barely made some significant changes ahead of that second season. Among them, he'll have new assistant coach on the bench, Sean Davey, the former BYU All-American and Warriors backs coach, is moving on from the club. He'll have a new general manager, Brandon Sparks, who's been the GM there for several years in Utah. He's also moving on. Both are looking to pursue opportunities outside of rugby, according to a club release. He's also bringing in some new guys. Longtime Utah rugby fans, especially down at BYU, longtime BYU assistant, most recently at Utah Valley University. Wayne Tarawiti will be the new director of players and pathway for the Utah Warriors, so he'll work a lot with development and some recruitment and kind of help out with the Warriors selects as well as the first team. And then they're also bringing in a new chief commercial officer in Andy Chestnut, which I think will be good for the game overall. Longtime business background, most recently with companies like Disco, Lease, and Quizzers that you may have heard of here on the Wasatch Front, and Expedia as well. So couple changes. More changes will certainly be coming. We're posting this shortly before, about a day before, the annual MLR Collegiate Draft, where the Warriors expect to be somewhat active, although they did just trade first-round pick out of the draft. So we'll see how things wind up there. No spoilers here. We'll wait to see how that winds up, and maybe we'll get Coos back to go and talk about that on the podcast, I should say. But in the meantime, let's get to my conversation with Utah Warriors second-year head coach Greg Cooper about Utah, about the state of the game, and about where the rugby team goes in his second season on the Wasatch Front. We're going to call this episode of the podcast the Rugby Report. Those who know me know that I'm a little bit of a closeted rugby fan. Obviously, one of the media that hangs around the Utah Warriors, a Major League Rugby team based in the Salt Lake Valley in Harriman. And I am extremely pleased today to be joined by, I almost said it right there, but second-year head coach. I almost said first year again, but second-year Utah Warriors head coach Greg Cooper, who's going to join me to talk a little bit about his first season in charge of the Warriors and kind of what he saw out of MLR and the state of the game here stateside. But Coops, thanks so much for sitting down with me for a couple minutes.
Always a pleasure, and look forward to chatting.
Yeah. Coming off of a season, like I mentioned, your first season in MLR, the Warriors finished 10-6-0 overall for 50 points, just 3 points outside of the playoffs. So close, but not quite there. I'm sure you don't think about that at all in the last couple of weeks since the season ended. Those 3 points. Fourth place in the West. Set all sorts of revenue records, crowd records, attendance records. You tied a franchise record, I know, for home wins. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Most of that probably means very little or very much to you. I don't know. But how would you, just kind of big picture-wise, how would you define your first year here in Major League Rugby?
Well, I think I stated right from the start that I have experience and I have expertise, but it really, I didn't know much about. Obviously, I did my homework and knew enough about Utah Warriors, as much as I probably could without being here. Didn't know much about MLR other than what I'd seen. So, look, I looked, I listened, I took on board what I could, and I look back now and I know a lot more than I did from a year ago.
Sure.
And it's been a great experience. It really has. It's been a really, really enjoyable experience. Looking back on it, we did set, and I said it right from the start, you should get measured on making the playoffs, and that's our goal every year. We're a whisker away, but always I'm a believer that you end up where you end up. There's no excuses. It's just, what do you learn from it? So, we had a year of improvement, and that's really important.
Sure.
I mean, every year you should improve. I don't know how big the improvement should be, but if you win a championship, you need to be 5% better the next year to win it again. So you're not going to win it if you're the same. So we improved from the previous year. We didn't make the playoffs, and that's disappointing. We understand reasons why. We've learned from that. So I think we're sitting in a really good spot at the moment to make that improvement. I give the season a 7 out of 10.
Sure.
I'm never a 10 out of 10. I don't believe in a 10 out of 10. We just got to take it to a 9 plus. And that's what we need. This is the important time now, to make sure we can take it to a 9 plus.
Yeah, 70%, that's a passing grade in a lot of systems, but not an overly passing grade either. Kind of skirting by the skin of your teeth, to bring it back to that academic analogy a little bit. But when you look at this past year, obviously there are highs, there are lows. You mentioned it right there. You're a whisker away from the playoffs, just 3 points. And in a league like Major League Rugby, the difference of 3 points can be really, really fine. It can be really minute. That's, an extra bonus point here for scoring a fourth try, maybe pulling within a try for another bonus point here and there. Are those sorts of little things, maybe little rules, little quirks of MLR, or are those the kinds of things that you can also learn from, in addition to everything that you're going through right now in terms of on-field performance, that you can kind of take into next year?
Yeah, I'll break it down. I'll break it down to a couple of key things that I see, and I saw it in day one when we arrived. When I say when we arrived, it's a bit of a generalisation, but our testing fitness-wise when we first arrived was well below where it should be. So we arrived in a state that was going to put us behind the 8 ball right from the start. Nothing to do with the conditioning team. It's something that we need to make sure in terms of selection of the squad, in terms of when we talk about Utah Built is not, and obviously it's something that just came in this year.
Sure.
Utah Built is not about turning up and not in a condition that doesn't befit what you should be, the condition you should be in. So for me, that put us behind the 8 ball right from the start. If you have a look at the last game we beat New York, that was the second win in 18 attempts going to the Eastern Conference. There's something wrong with that. There's something. Yes, there's 4 hours flight. Yeah, it might be warmer, although that time of the year we started to get warm.
Right.
So that's wrong. That shouldn't happen. I'm not a believer in home and away. I'm a believer in working through how do you prepare yourself to be the best away from home. So that record's got to change. How many games did you see this year at the 60th minute mark where the Utah Warriors flicked a switch and came home and just blew the opposition away? That happened once, happened against Toronto. But Toronto were struggling. We should be able to flick a switch. Someone asked me the other day, they said, well, what is the philosophy of the Utah Warriors and how do you build your game around the Utah Warriors? And I said, 4,750 feet above sea level. And they said, what do you mean? I said, it's an advantage. The cold weather can be a disadvantage because we can't sometimes get out there and train, and we go to New Orleans and it's significantly hotter. Sure. But our lungs, we should be maximising what we've got here. Someone said, oh, you got a fortress here. I said, no, we haven't. We played well, but we lost 2 games. A fortress you don't lose. So, because that means that the walls have been broken down. So, really an answer to where I think, this season, we need to have This team needs to be able to. Every team that comes to Utah need to think, okay, we're at that 60th minute mark. We're in trouble. Here they come, and it didn't happen this year. So there's a lot of the work we've been to look. We had most teams under pressure. I think our game strategy is good. I think our players are good, very, very good players. Our drivers drive the game really well, and for most of the games, we were probably in the driver's seat, 40th minute mark, 50th minute mark, or whatever. But then that's when we should be saying, right, that's it, you're gone, and we just put them away. So, yeah, there's a philosophical change.
Sure.
We may not necessarily be the most powerful scrum in the competition, because the scrum is 5% of the game, very important 5% of the game. Because if you get it wrong, you're now defending a line out, and you're in trouble. But once that scrum's over, there's 80% of the game now starts. Attack, defence. If you can't maximise your attack and defence because you're not quite operating at the efficiency you should be, there's no point in having the most powerful scrum in the competition, because you've just won the ball, you don't use it, or they've won the ball and you can't stop them. So there is going to be a little bit of a refocus on who the Utah Warriors are, and we'll play some really exciting rugby, but we'll be playing it at high intensity.
For sure. Well, there's a very nice core, I think, that you can potentially bring back and build on, kind of a foundation for this club as well, because even though you were a first-year head coach, inheriting what you inheriting the state of the program the way that you did, there were a lot of really very good, and I know rugby is a team game and that's the main focus, but there were also a lot of really good kind of breakout individual performances that contributed to the collective. We're sitting here taping this as league awards are starting to roll out. Everybody talks about accolades and whatnot. So I'm thinking of guys like Lance Williams, first team All MLR. Joe Mano sets a franchise try scoring record for the Warriors, second team All MLR. I thought Joel Hodgson came onto the scene. Took him maybe a couple of weeks to kind of get acclimated to Major League Rugby and the state some, but he kind of came on really strong towards the end. Is there, when you look at guys like that and a number of others that, I could literally be here all day and probably half the roster, but do you see kind of a foundation there where you can move forward and build on, just personnel-wise, kind of the team, I guess?
Well, I think the first comment you made before I move on to that is there is a foundation already there, because the people who when I came in, there's a lot of great work done by the Utah Warriors. Now, I've been entrusted with trying to take that further. So when I first arrived, I didn't obviously understand. Now I understand, and now I'm looking to make adjustments to take it forward. But there's been a lot of good work there. I think if you have a look at the promotion of the game, we had the most American eligible players playing MLR, which is great. That we had that. We got at least three new players into the USA Eagles training squad. Tommy Tuivau, Joe Manu, Lance Williams. Yep. So and Takaji's just gone in there as well.
Oh yeah.
So
that's right.
So that's as a coach. I think the ultimate honour in any sport is to represent your country. You have real pride in your club, incredible pride in your club, and I think if I was to see if I was to see a country that epitomises pride in their country, it's America. So yes, rugby's a minority sport at the moment, but you're still representing your country. So pride in the Warriors, pride in representing your country. So there is a development there. Joey Mano, yes, great, scoring tries. Lancey, Joel, the names you've mentioned there. Caleb Makani.
Caleb, yep. I totally left off Caleb. My bad.
But not just that. Look at a guy like Mika Kruse. Mika is a winger, jumps him and put him into centre. He was outstanding at centre. So look, we've got some, and you got a guy like Paulie Mullen. What a great team man. Yep. Big disappointment with the Eagles. As we know, they should have qualified. They were that close. They didn't. Paulie put that behind him, dusted that off, disappointed, and really had a big season for us.
Yep.
So, yeah, look. I think there was a lot of positives and a lot of growth in the players, and I think that for me is really important. We beat New England. I think the day we beat New England, we had 9 We were able to pick 9 international players. We picked 8. We had 15 American eligible players, and they had 5 American eligible players. So I think we really are promoting the American eligible players, and of course we've got international players. Everyone does. Every competition in the world does that. But I think we're setting a great example of promoting American eligible players. We've got a number of players from the Crossroads Cup, so it's really important.
Well, you mentioned the Crossroads Cup. You mentioned development and developing a lot of American eligible players, and even a good number of local players, guys that came through Utah. Some of them were born in Utah, or they just kind of trained and came up through Utah. And as I get into that, I want to mention there are some changes that are already happening within the organization. Brandon Sparks has left the club as general manager to pursue opportunities outside of rugby. Sean Davies, your assistant coach, I almost said longtime assistant coach, but I guess 1 year. That's 100% of your time here, so I guess it's a long time, right? Sean also leaving the club. So you've got now 2 assistant coach openings that you're going to look to fulfill, I would imagine sooner rather than later. But you're already starting to build out a little bit of that kind of pathway program. You're bringing in Wayne Tarawiti, a little bit of a local rugby legend here. He was an assistant coach for years at BYU, won 5 national championships, knows about the development and pathways and that kind of thing. Director of Players and Pathway, I believe, is his official title right there. And then there's also a new chief commercial officer as well, Andy Chestnut. We should give a quick shout out to him as well. So when you look at kind of some of the guys that are leaving, some of the guys who are already coming in, specifically Wayne, and then maybe what you want out of 2 new assistant coaches, how do you kind of see that transition moving forward?
Well, obviously now, I mean, you look at Brandon and Sean, who've done a lot of great work for the Utah Warriors, and so we have to now look at, well, what is the next step, and how do we grow this now? And a guy like Wayne is an incredible human being. Very smart operator, passionate about rugby, has a great life story. He relates to people, and that's very important. For us to be who we need to be, we have got to be a very cohesive unit. We have got to be very accurate with what we do. We have to be efficient. By being cohesive, we've got to understand people, and Wayne really understands people. So that's going to be important. So for me at the moment, great having Wayne coming on board. The assistant coaches, obviously we've got to replace Sean. My role stays as a head coach, but I'm freeing up a bit of time to actually be more of a help for the coaches. So yes, I'll get my hands dirty, and yes, I'll coach, but we'll have a defence coach, we'll have an attack coach, we'll have a forward coach in charge of contact area as well. So they are the strategists, and they will drive it, but the overall strategist will be me, and I'll driving the vision, helping them, helping players. So I think what Kimball's bringing together here now, and he's a very astute businessman, he's bringing together a structure that is going to be significantly more efficient than we have been. But again, Utah Warriors are only 7 years next year, so it's I think we've been incredibly proficient in our development, but Kimball's ability to see what's next required is now coming to the fore. So what we're going to be doing in our next phase of the development of the Utah Warriors is even more efficient. For
sure. You talked about Sean a little bit there, and kind of what you're looking for in your next coaches. There is also one assistant that's retaining, Robbie Abel. We should give him a shout out, kind of for what he did with that forwards group in particular. And in the scrum, I thought he jumped in really well, especially for a guy who I kind of have to remind myself, Robbie's a very new coach.
Yeah.
Literally just retired from playing a year ago. Actually came over here while he was still playing, and kind of dual player back home and then coaching over here for his first year. What did you see out of him in terms of kind of getting his feet wet as a rugby coach, and what did you like so much about him to I guess, keep him around?
Well, what I like about Robbie, you're right. Robbie's new to the coaching situation, but Robbie achieved a high level and through obviously understandably good talent as a rugby player, but also being smart. He's clever. He thinks about his game. He understands his game. Relates really well to people. The players trust him. They respect him. So I actually see Robbie. There has to be pathway in everything we do. So there has to be pathway in coaching as well. So I'm not going to be around forever. I love Utah. I love this team, but I'm not going to be around forever. So for me, there has to be someone who takes over my role as a coach. So for me, I see Robbie as the potential to move into the head coaching role. Obviously, he's got to develop and prove that. But
he's got a little head coach in waiting, but head coach sort of germinating. He's a future.
He is, and that's how we'd like it to be. You know, I'd love it. I'd love it to be that former Utah Warriors players eventually become very much Toulouse-like model. They end up becoming into our pathway program, into our assistant role, maybe being a head coach. So I see Robbie as being one of those. In terms of the other coaches, it's just a matter of, and we're working through that process at the moment, it's getting the right fit for the Utah Warriors. Sometimes I look at, sometimes it could be an incredibly experienced coach, it could be someone with a lot of potential. And I know the Crusaders have used a really strong model with Scott Robinson where they've brought in a lot of younger ones who have a real potential, and Scott's role is to help mould those. Now, we're keeping a very open mind in who we're looking for, but again, it has to be a Utah Warriors fit. Clearly, they've got to have coaching talent, but they have to be a Utah Warriors fit. And we talk as again, Utah built. There's a Warriors way, and we just need to make sure we're sticking with that.
Yep. You're just over 1 year into the job, and you're already dropping the Utah built, the Warriors way. You've fully ingratiated yourself with the culture, which I'm sure your bosses and even the fans in the community love to see. Personally, I love to see it. I think it's great.
Well,
that you've assimilated all.
I love the idea of Utah built. I really do, and I know Kimball's driven this, and I love it because the teams that have character and fortitude quite often can be ones who can relate to who they are, where they're from. Now, I've said this from the start. I'm from New Zealand, but I'm actually a part of the Utah history now. I'm living in Utah.
That's true.
And when my time comes to go back to New Zealand, and I hope that's significant time away because I really enjoy what I do. When that comes, I can look back and say I'm a part of the Utah history. So I wasn't built in the 1800s here, but I'm a part of that history.
Yeah.
The history of Utah, you just have to jump in the car and start driving, and you look at, some people did some amazing things to settle here. We just come out of a winter that was quite significant.
Yeah.
It's hot in the summer.
Yep.
There's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of effort, a lot of dreaming, a lot of innovation has gone into creating this place. I'm talking in particular Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
So I'm new to it. I'm pretty proud of it. I'm proud that I'm here. So, and sometimes when your backs are against the wall, the opposition are firing at you and they're firing, hard at you. If you can actually think about this land and the people and what has actually happened, maybe it'll give you that 1% you need to actually hold them out. So we need to embrace Utah built because it actually has significant meaning.
Last question, and I'll get you out of here on this as we kind of zoom into hyperlocal Utah built, Utah rugby, Warriors rugby. Let's zoom out all the way, kind of look at where the game is at, where Major League Rugby is at. You've had a full year to kind of see it and digest it, and obviously rugby is still smaller in this country. It's not one of the big four major sports that we like to talk about in the United States, but it is growing quickly. The United States is going to be hosting a World Cup here in a few years, so hopefully it picks up a little bit of steam. MLR feels like it's picking up some good steam. They're about to add their 13th team, I believe it is, in Miami next year.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of see the game at stateside as somebody who came in from places where it's been very large, obviously your home country in New Zealand, for example, other places where it's growing, like your more recent stop in Japan, that kind of thing? Where do you kind of see U.S. rugby?
It's at a rapid growth, and when I say that, I'm talking about the playing side of it at the moment. 2021, I saw 2021. a good level. It went up a level in 2022. It went up a significant level in 2023. Okay, I think Toronto weren't a bad side. They just had a lot of injuries.
Sure.
They performed pretty well to start with. There were no easy beats really out there. There was nothing. There was not a Dallas from the first year.
Yeah.
There was not a DC who were leaking try after try after try. There wasn't that. Yes, they were scoring tries, but they were leaking so many tries. It wasn't really that. And I expect it to go up again next year as well. So from a playing point of view, it's getting better and better. I think I can only speak from this organisation. This organisation is a really solid organisation, and they're going to get better and better. With the carrot of the Rugby World Cup in 2031 for the men's and 2033 for the women's, I think if there's a sustainable 5% per year, 10%, whatever that sustainability is, and whatever that momentum is, it's going to get kicked a lot. A big kick come World Cup. So I think to me, that is the key thing. That yes, we are seeing it. Yes, it is growing, but it has to keep growing. We don't want to level off, or if we get a level off, that's okay. But we've got to get to that. We've got to get to that Rugby World Cup with incremental growth every year, because a little bit like the Soccer World Cup, not much in America prior to the Soccer World Cup, and then bang. And I think the Rugby World Cup will be that, because once this players see rugby as an opportunity for a career, and that it comes with increased revenue and everything. Once they see that, there's some athletes here in America. There's talent here in America. There's not the growing up with a rugby ball as a 5-year-old,
sure,
like New Zealand has.
Sure.
But when that level starts, when it starts growing and it starts becoming more of a viable career option, and I think the critical thing is the MLR keeps moving at a level where it keeps improving every year, get to that Rugby World Cup, and bang, I'm pretty sure you're going to see it explode. Could explode before then, but it will explode after then.
Yeah. And so much about the growth of the game overall, I think, is about building that up, and that's why I think you're seeing sort of these incremental steps in terms of expansion, in terms of kind of trying to broaden the player pool a little bit with Major League Rugby.
Well, with that, in your comment you made about the revenue, I think we had 5 weeks in a row, 4 or 5 games in a row. Sorry, that the revenue grew. To me, I'd be hoping we're challenging that every week next week. Now, every home game next year, because I think that's where it's heading. I really believe that's where it's heading.
Yeah. Well, let's end right on that one. The fan base. They made a pretty good impression on you. I could see kind of week to week. You look up into the stands, smile a little bit, see kind of the types of crowds that were packing Zions Bank Stadium out here. What did you think of the fan base, kind of the supporters that came out and supported this club week after week, and what do you hope to see from them growth-wise, I guess, next year and beyond?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's an opportunity for me to thank them, because this is incredible. This is genuine. They are huge to us. I've said this before. I think I listen to every head coach and MLR and probably every coach around the world. They say we've got the greatest fans, and I've turned around and said we actually have the greatest fans. We are. That is a genuine comment. There's no one competes with us. We went to Seattle, and Seattle was really good, great fan base, but it's not Utah Warriors fan base. It's not the Utah Warriors passion. Big Buddha on the sideline, and these things are great. They really are. I do think it's tremendous, and I love seeing people before the match, and seeing regular people and saying hi and having a chat, and just enjoying the occasion. So we are really, really fortunate, and I do expect that to grow, because I know this year there's so many people that I have met here who've gone to rugby, watch our games for the first time, and they're coming back. So my responsibility is to keep improving this team, that they are getting a wonderful experience, and I would love to get a home playoff here, and just reward them for that, because it'll be electric here at a home playoff.
For sure. Well, that's the goal for year number 2 of the Greg Cooper era, I think, and beyond, hopefully. Coming off of I would call it a moderately successful year number 1, still a lot of work to do, but a long way that you've come. Greg Cooper, now the second-year head coach of the Utah Warriors rugby program. Thank you so much for joining me and for kind of recapping the season. Thanks for everything that you've done for me and for the fan base, for our readership, and all of that. Really appreciate it, and good luck in year 2.
It's an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed it. I think we're now poised to take this to another level.
Hopefully soon, to 2033 and beyond. 33 for the
Exactly.